Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the declining, or the allegedly declining, fertility rate among Western men. And this is unique apparently to only Western men. Only white Western men in the advanced economies are suffering from this precipitous decline. Now, this, I think the latest one was several years ago now, but there's been numerous alleged studies. I mean, I don't know how good these studies are, really. Is it the same people that say we've got an epidemic of this or that, or where there's an epidemic of rape and, that sort of thing? You just don't know. Is it done to control us? Is it just more government lies and media lies to say, well, look, all this fertility rate falling. We've got to bring a lot of black and brown folks to the West just to keep the procreation machine happening. So, but let's have a look at it sort of in overall terms. What we should, it's very reasonable to be acutely suspicious of anything governments tell us these days, and I think we all know that. Yeah, there are times I think we all believed, not long ago, when we all believed what the government said. We believed it was honest government representing us, the people. Now hardly anybody believes it, and it's very sad that it's happened. Anyway, the declining fertility rate. Now it's alleged that between, I think it was 1973 and 2012, the fertility rate fell in the West, and again, uniquely in the West, uniquely white men, the fertility rate fell by 62%. Now, if you look at some of the studies, they seem, they don't look very reliable to me, and the people that have done them seem more like activists than scientists examining and testing data. But anyway, let's just have a look at it. Let's assume that's so. Let's assume that the rate, the fertility rate, has declined by 62% in 40 years, and now the reasons vary, and depending on which report you read or which documents you refer to, there's quite a wide sort of cross section. One report says that the amount of plastic in the environment is causing, because in the West we have more plastic, it's alleged, so that this is causing, various chemicals and toxins are leaching from these plastics. They're getting into the bloodstream, being consumed through the digestive system and so on, and this is causing a decline in male fertility. Other ones have suggested that the various chemical products in fertilizers and hormones given to animals, and even things like the chemicals used to create the non-stick fry pans and saucepans and pots and pans and so on, that stuff leaches into the bloodstream and causes or the digestive system and thus the bloodstream, and that causes reduction in fertility. And it's argued that as these things are so rare in the developed world, that the undeveloped world, the developing world, the third world, since these products are so rare in the third world, or a non-consumer society, then those people are unaffected, and therefore their fertility rate is much higher. I'm not sure I buy any of that. I guess I see the point. More chemical and toxin intensive environment can potentially cause harm, but I don't know why it would uniquely cause harm there, or why are people living longer on average, why are people living healthier, longer lives on average. If it's so why would it affect nothing except the fertility rate? So I don't buy that. That's not a plausible. It's possible, I guess. We shouldn't write it off completely, but I don't see it as a plausible explanation at all. Now, if we look at the timeline of this decline in fertility, alleged decline in fertility, then it coincides almost 100% with the beginning of the globalist project. And the first thing they went to attack was families. So men were traditionally the workers, the breadwinners, the protectors, the bring home the bacon, and head of the household. And I remember as a kid, I'd be at a friend's place or something, and he'd do something that displeased the mother, and wait till your father comes home, and those sorts of things. So now that world changed drastically. The globalists wanted lower wages and more consumption. They saw that as an easy way to make money rather than being better at what they did, or better organisational development, or more innovation, or things like that. So they went for, we want women in the workforce, and we want to reduce the wages of men so that two incomes are necessary in a household, and this effectively reduced the purchasing power of the paycheck by 50+%. The more women entered the workforce, the more the salaries sort of fell. And if they wanted to attack any particular area that was where the wage pressure was building up, they would just suddenly say, well, there's not enough women in this workforce. It's misogyny. It's male oppression. It's this. So they would get more women in that workforce, and now they're using, of course, the racist thing to get more black and brown people into the workforce. So they don't stop calling names, and they've been doing it since the 70s. So this drastically changed men's role in society and women's role in society, and so the man was no longer the guy that opened the door for the lady, and so on, and was no longer sort of the role of protector and head of household. All that disappeared, and with technological warfare such as cyber warfare and so on, the idea of needing a warrior caste, if you will, and a lot of a large warrior caste, that's pretty much gone as well. You look at an American, say the Americans got the largest military in the world. You look at their deployment, because it's so technology and material intensive. Even in a major war, they'd probably only put 250,000 people on the ground. That's from a population of over 300 million people. Now it's common that around 10% of any or say 20% of the male population would be drafted for military service, and that's on the ground military service, not guys in the back room pushing pens and paper and so on. So today you'd say that would be less than 1%. And if you look at the quality of recruits that armed forces are getting, not just in the United States, but Britain and elsewhere, the quality of the recruits is declining, and something that the armed forces all across the West are making worse themselves by running around claiming that they need black lesbian quotas and transgender quotas, and the most absurd things. Very self-destructive, all that. So the roles changed. Men are no longer the warriors, no longer the head of the households. They're not even needed for procreation in reality. And the globalist project has really made quite a successful job of breaking up the family, in certainly the middle class, the aspirational family in particular has been really hit hard. Now, also, the relationship between men and women in terms of romance and getting together and matrimony and so on, that's sort of changed radically as well. And just an example, as a guy that I know, he bought he's not, I mean, he does okay, but he's not making big money, so he bought a 3-bedroom. I think it was an apartment, and yes, it was in an apartment, and he needed to help him pay the mortgage. He sort of had the minimum amount of deposit, so he kind of had big repayments. So he got a couple of like just roommates to share the place with him, move in, and each have a room, and they help him pay the mortgage. And so he's, one of them's a guy, and there's another one as a girl. She loses her job, or something happens, and so she says, "Don't worry, I'll get another job, and I can't pay the rent this month, but I'll pay it next month when I get it." So he says, "Yeah, fine, okay." She's been there a few months, and he's a pretty sort of easygoing guy, and then another month goes by, and she's behind. And he says, "Okay, look, you're gonna, I can't carry this rent. I need this money to make the mortgage payments, so you're going to have to go." And so she goes, and he gets someone else in, another guy, and the next thing you know, he's being summoned to court. His de facto wife wants a settlement. What de facto wife, you might ask? Well, what this girl's done is she's gone to the women's special women's division of legal aid, and they've looked up the guy's income. He's never been unemployed. He's got decent. He owns property. We can shake him down for some money. Is the view? After all, you have to redress the imbalance. She's part of a protected victim class, and he's straight white male. He's the oppressor class, and he damn well should fucking pay for what his descendants may have done hundreds, if not thousands, or tens of thousands of years ago. And that's justice. It's equity, and so on. So they demand, for example, $25,000, and he says, "Well, no, she's not my de facto wife. What are you talking about? She was a roommate, and I kicked her out for not paying the rent." But a week or so before he kicks her out, she comes into, at night time, she suddenly comes into bed climbs into bed and starts, getting amorous with him, and he rather foolishly, in my view, given that she was behind the rent. They have intimate, they have a fuck, and then she uses that to say, "Well, there you go, I'm his de facto wife," and we had sexual relations. So anyway, he refuses to go along with it. He goes to court, and he wins, but he wins only on quite a technical point. She'd left a number of letters behind when she'd gone, which had her name on it, and her parents' home address. Her argument was that she didn't live anywhere else; that was her only place. But because of these letters, which the guy gave to his lawyer, they were able to prove in court that she was, she did actually live at her parents' place, and she wasn't there, and she'd only been there a few months anyway. But the scary thing is that the court argued, and the various laws use it, that after 90 days of a relationship, just 3 months of a relationship between a man and a woman, she can claim to be his de facto wife. You've got to be kidding me, right? But look, those laws exist. Now, that's an example of one law, and there are literally hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of laws just like that, just designed to force men to pay and make men pay and compensate the victim class and so on. And until you come across them and trip over them and have them thrust upon you, you don't realise just how many of these little tripwire type laws, ideological tripwire type laws there are. So, but the legal cost of defending the case came to close on $30,000. So, given the stress and the time in court and all this sort of thing, he tells me that he would have been better off paying the $25,000, but it was extortion. I mean, it's a mafia shakedown. Made legal. Now, we need to understand here that this girl wouldn't have taken the action if she'd had to pay for the legal costs herself. Nor would she have taken the action if she hadn't gone to a government department that was extremely feminist activist. This division of the legal aid is their job is to go and get men. That is their job, straight men. And if it's straight white men, with a steady job and property, all the better, because they're the real enemy. Those evil straight white male middle classes. So she walks in there, and they say, "Oh, let's get him. We'll pay for it. Won't cost you anything." And so she's able to indulge a fantasy of in this case, revenge for the guy kicking her out, and it's all paid for by the taxpayer. Now, if that didn't exist, if the A, the law didn't exist, and B, if the government wasn't putting radical activist lesbian feminists into these legal aid divisions, and if they didn't have a generous budget to go after men. I mean, they've got all this money to spend on doing this sort of stuff, but while there are homeless ex-soldiers sort of living rough, and surely there's better things to spend money on, isn't there? But nonetheless, it's an ideological madness thing, and so now she's able to just walk away from that. She lost the case, but legal aid have picked up the tab. Hasn't cost her a penny, not a cent, but it cost him $30,000 to defend it. So, in his view, he's never going to have another female roommate, and he's very careful now about all his dealings with. So I think things like that are really what play into the wider discourse. People aren't sort of focused on procreating. It was when I was a kid, it was considered almost as a duty to get married and procreate, but certainly not now, or maybe in some quarters. But without that commitment and that focus to family and building family and society and all that sort of thing, which is being rapidly torn to pieces by the globalists to suit their ends and no one else's, then I think the decline in fertility, if that's even accurate, will be more likely coming from those sorts of things than it would be from say plastics or hormones in meat or something. And I guess a more exhaustive study would be needed and peer reviewed and the like. But my view is, given the relationship of men and the position that families hold in society, and the need for warriors and all these sort of things has changed, then I would see that the fertility rate, if it's even realistically declined, would come more from that than anything else. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.